We are live. When I say we, it's just me at the moment at 7 p.m. in state-controlled Britain, and it's our weekly live. And yeah, I think my camera's just gone off. No, there it is. It's back. It's back. And if you've got questions, you can type them in the chat. That would be lovely to hear from you. That would be really good. And let's have a little look at who we've got in the room already, which would be nice. Yes, you finally got here in time. Well done, Rickard Fours, 2513. And woohoo! I finally caught one live. That is from Parbida. These names, they're just to do, make it difficult for me, aren't they? Excited for today. That's very good. I'm going to give up doing the names. I think I've got a little bit of a problem with my camera. It's a bit jittery. I do apologise. Let's have a look. We've got a nice thumbs up. Are we live is the next thing here. Philip Greeley, hello. I am live. Laura is saying evening all. Yes, good evening all. That's very good. Hi, that's excellent. That's Tam. Marion is saying hello and showing some steaks there and some love, some hearts, which is excellent. Rickard again. Hi from Sweden. That's good. Oh, Nancy's in. Excellent, Nancy. Good. Hi, Stephen. She's saying. That's good to see Nancy. And we've got Swim Fit 57, Steve, Trumbull, Raleigh, NC, and Cami, of course, is here saying hello, which is great. Sally Ann. Lots of people coming in. Howdy to you. I think this is fantastic. And we got Alberta, Canada, and that is there's anyway, Teresa, is it Teresa Labelle? Anyway, and Coach Bronson. Well, Coach Bronson, I've just done a brilliant he's just done a brilliant hour talking about studies and how to spot the errors, which is basically use your eyes and brain, I think. Excellent, just really good. I can't wait to get that out. Don't forget the headshot, Bronson. That'd be good. And no Richard at the moment. Dr. Volker Menzi is saying greetings from Hamburg. Yes, a hamburger. We've got a hamburger in. That's good. And FL Girl is good to be here from Palm Bay, Florida. Wow. And who else have we got? Mary Sailgi6527. Big fan of you and Richard. Yes, I don't know where Richard is at the moment. And we've also got wife is an American Indian and she does stuff with beads. I'm her husband. So PA, therefore, right. Yes, PA beader. Right. That makes sense now. See, words have to make sense to me. Otherwise, I really struggle. We've got Kamara Mollies in from Florida, just off work shift. Can't believe I made it in time. Another Phil Greeley saying hi all, and I think I've caught up with the messages now. Good morning from Australia. That's from Lisa. That's ever so good. And we have got Des howdy, which is excellent. So yes. I don't know where Richard is at the moment, but I think it's streaming to his channel. I hope he's okay. It is only 3 minutes into the live stream. So I always jokingly say to him, I'll see you at 7:05. So I don't know what's happened there. If you want to do a question, you can type it in the live chat. Obviously, you can also do a super chat, which is handy for me. Or for Richard if he's here, because that supports the channel, which would be very good. And I've just messaging Richard to see where he is, because that would be handy to know if he's coming in or not. Let me just do that if you don't mind. Maybe he's not coming tonight. Maybe I haven't seen a message. Triglycerides is something we're going to be talking about in a minute, by the way. So, yes, it's one. I'm going to get to your question in a second. So let's message Richard and try and do a question at the same time. Should we do that? I think that's good. So we've got a new member, and we've got a super chat. So the new member, let's just do that, show that. Thank you very much. Fatty food, which is good with the pH. Very clever. Very, very clever. Right, so here's our super chat starting off on 19.99. Sounds like one of those auctions that you see on television. Go in left, right, and centre. I had a blood test last week. Total cholesterol was 8.3. HDL was 2.1. Non-high density lipoprotein 6.2. Triglycerides 0.54. LDL 6.1. Serum HDL ratio is 4. How am I doing? Well, this HDL ratio, well, firstly, this isn't, I'm not a doctor. It's not medical advice. It's just information looking at those numbers. So your total cholesterol, 8.3, total cholesterol, 8.3 is elevated, we'd say, in the standard ranges, but that's just factual, like I say. HDL is 2.1. So let's just make sure that we've got the right information here in the right ratios. That's pretty good. HDL is 2.1 and triglycerides 6.2. Triglycerides are 0.54. So that's a really good ratio, isn't it? I'm quite happy with that. Triglycerides very low, HDL very high. I like that very much indeed, because I think the HDL to triglyceride ratio tends to be more indicative of good health. That's what seems to come out in the literature ever such a lot. A little bit thrown because I haven't heard back from Richard. Sorry. So let's just have a look. I could just chase him up one more time. Not heard from him today. So just don't know what you're speaking about. Running 5 minutes late on ASAP. Right. Okay. It's 5 minutes late. We said 5.7, Richard. So let's get back to the questions and stuff like that. So those numbers are okay, but I mean, it's better to have a bit more context, because a lipid panel like that is, LDL is estimated. So we need to be aware of that. It's an equation based on some other numbers. So if Coach Brunson is actually watching right now, this is exactly what we were talking about in the last hour. I don't like things that aren't directly measured, especially if you're eating this way, because that LDL is literally an estimate, unless you have magnetic resonating. What's it called now? Richard not being here to show me, as you could tell. But anyway, if you get your subfractions measured, which is a bit more accurate, and then you get your particles, the particle count, oxidized LDL, and all that sort of stuff, which is a bit more nuanced. But from those numbers, doesn't seem particularly troublesome. That's it. NMR fractions. That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you so much. From those numbers, they look okay, don't they? But I would want more context and how you feel. That's the most important thing, because if you've got symptoms, that's the whole point of blood tests, not to do it the other way around, to get the blood test to tell you you're not doing well, or you're doing badly, or whatever. It's really what matters. Your symptoms, how you present, what is the effect of what you're doing on your body. So let's have a look if there's any more questions. Hopefully that was all right. If you have more panel, if you have more numbers, what I'd offer to you is you could email it to me. If you've got a whole blood test, that would be better. I'd much prefer that. And then we can give you a really good, rundown. Because you've done a super chat in 1999, so I think I'd like to do that if you don't mind. Zero Carb Coach, all spelt out as one word, at gmail.com. Send your entire panel, and I'll send you a little mini report on that, because that's very kind of you. Obviously, not doctor's advice, not medical advice, but just to give you some feedback of where to go next. Right, okay. And Copus, Lee Copus's mum, who's a fantastic person. See you tomorrow, Stephen. Safe travels. Thank you very much. That's because we're filming the BBC thing tomorrow. We've got Dr. Kiltz there, which should be good. Lee Copus is obviously going to be there. Stephanie Taylor and Carl Day, of course. The Joker in the pack. And he seems to like my state-controlled Britain phrase for some reason. So that's good. We've got another new member to the channel, which is Mikey. Now, I never know whether the channel members are my channel or Richard's, but anyway, whoever's channel, the whole point of this is to be a showcase for both of us and get the information out there. So yeah, that you would appreciate that. Yeah, so definitely send them by email. Tomorrow is going to be a difficult day because we're filming this BBC documentary thing all day. Well, I'm traveling for most of the day. I think the actual filming bit is about 5 hours, but it's a 4-hour journey there and then 4 hours back. So great. And this is Sylvie saying, thank you for your fatty latte. I've managed to cut out coffee. Yes, the fatty latte. I love feedback from people. And I got told off because I whizzed it up in a container that's plastic. So we've changed that. See, 61, I've been doing this 6 years, and I made that rookie mistake. So it's 35 grams of butter, 100 milliliters of water boiled up, a pinch of salt, then a non-carnivore thing. Well, salt's non-carnivore when you think about it. It's not an animal, is it? But then there's a little bit of vanilla extract and 2 egg yolks, and you just boil up the water, stick it all in a whizzer, whiz it up, and you've got what's called a fatty latte. I have it every morning, but without the vanilla extract. There you go. So that is actually a carnivore thing. It's so delicious. Thanks a lot. Great. That's good. We're here to help. That's the whole point. Right. I used to take an omega-3 6-9 supplement as it was supposedly heart healthy. I've stopped that now as I realized I was getting enough omega-6s. But do we need omega-9s? Well, this is an interesting question. Whether you should supplement with omega-9s is another matter, isn't it? And I think we should be getting all our our fatty acids basically from food and avoiding things like seed oils, which changes our ratios. And when we start to supplement, well, firstly, do we need to? Let me just message Richard. See where he is. See if he's coming. Sorry about this. How boring, just watching top of my head for a couple of seconds. Right. So, because this would be a nice one for Richard, as he's a supplement king. So let's come back to that, if you don't mind, because I think he'd love that question. Would you mind that, Helen, if you don't mind? I think, but I can do it if he doesn't come back in the next couple of, if he just doesn't come back in the next minute or so. But let's, I don't like doing that. Let's do the question because you've got here, I'm here, so let's do it. So omega-9 is what's called conditionally essential. That means you might need it or you might not. It depends on the context, really. And we know that omega-6 is pro-inflammatory and omega-3 is anti-inflammatory. But you can make 9 from other things. You can synthesize it from other fatty acids. So I think when you're eating this way, there's enough fatty acids to be able to do that. Your body is pretty smart, I would say. So I would just worry about the 3-to-6 ratio personally. And if you want to get really into the weeds, you can do testing for that. But I don't think you need to test either. I think if you're just eating this way, your body's pretty smart. And if we keep away from processed foods and seed oils, we're not going to be knocking out the ratio too much. So the ratio really sort of, well, 4-to-1, even 1-to-1 actually is very good. But let's go with that. Let's go with that. I don't think Richard's here yet. Question, carnivore, 1 good year now. Hey, excellent. That's good. What was the joke? Oh, anyway, we want to do that. Right, 1 good year now. Beef, butter, eggs, 2 to 3 meals. Constipation is still an issue. When I up fat, I gain weight. Solutions. Right. Well, firstly, is it constipation? Is it that you're not going to the toilet? Constipation is really when you're not going to the toilet, and also, when you do go, there's pain and it's discomfort and stuff like that. on this way of eating, very often you do poop less. So that's the first thing. So most people say up your fats, don't they? Which is why you've mentioned that, to get things moving. You could supplement if you're having a problem. I call magnesium citrate magnesium shitrate because it does definitely improve that area. It gets the thunder rolling, as they say. So I would maybe try a little bit of magnesium citrate. It could be fluid balance. You could be drinking too much water, which in the long run actually dehydrates you and can cause constipation, which I know it sounds a little bit strange. So if your urine is clear, then you're drinking too much water and your body is a lot of time flushing out the electrolytes, and you're not hydrating. Hydration is with electrolytes. So we'll put Richard on in a minute. He's just in hair and makeup at the moment. And what we'll do is get him on, and he can also talk about this as well. But I would look at the magnesium citrate, and also make sure in between eating, you leave at least 4 hours so you can get the migratory motor complex working, which is going to really help things to move. So I don't know if Richard's okay. Richard, are you okay to come on? Thumbs up? Yeah, right, okay. He's obviously somewhere where he normally isn't. I won't ask you to reveal where you are, but do you want to dive straight into a question?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Right. Okay. Well, I think I've covered it, but let's see if you come up. This will be interesting because he hasn't heard my answer. So let's see if he does the same thing. I think he will. Carnivore, 1 good year now. Beef, butter, eggs, 2 to 3 meals. Constipation is still an issue. When I up the fat, I gain weight. So solutions.
Carnivore for a year, beef, butter, eggs, 2 to 3 meals, 2 to 3 meals, which is good. Constipation. So is it constipation would be my first question, because generally when you gravitate, have you already said this?
Yes.
When you gravitate into a more animal-based way of living, our requirement to evacuate, if you like, becomes a lot less. Many of the compounds that we consume on a standard diet, processed foods, the fiber, etc. I mean, this can speed that up. Essentially, when we consume high quality animal proteins, the body's going to take a little bit longer to absorb because they're up to 100% bioavailable. So that's the first thing. Is it constipation, or are you just not going as regular as you once were? And that is very common. I know many people within the carnivore space that will go maybe once a week. And some every day, some every couple of days, but it does vary. But that's the first question. If it is constipation, then you'd be suffering with some form of bloating. The 2 to 3 meals is probably a good idea. Up the fat you gain. What fat are you up in is the question. If you are up in the butter, then that will lead to fat storage because of the odd chain fatty acids. So the odd chain fatty acids will go through a different pathway, essentially. They'll go through propionyl-CoA and succinyl-CoA and lead to fat storage in the same way that the cheese and Greek yogurt and things will. So if you want to up the fat, then up the fat from things like your saturated fats, so more tallow. You could try with MCT oil. MCT will help speed up that evacuation, if you like, particularly blends of things like C10 and C8, but any MCT will help with that. What else is there? Up the fat, again, weight. Eggs, I mean, you could look at reducing the eggs. Eggs are known to cause some form of constipation also. So you could look at reducing the protein in the eggs because of the overmucoid. The yolks tend not to be problematic. But again, 2 to 3 meals sounds good. And I'd come back to that original question. Is it actually constipation? Because, we do see this. It is very common on carnivore not to go as often.
Absolutely. That's a great answer. I mentioned magnesium. What do I call magnesium citrate? Do you know?
Magnesium shitrate in your Sean Connery accent.
Yes. And I always forget the MCTs, and I think that's because medium chain triglycerides, by the way, because you always cover it. So I need to get that in my repertoire, really, because it is it is also a good solution.
MCT is fantastic. The beauty is with this that it doesn't store in the same way that other fats do. So the MCT is sent directly to the liver through the hepatic portal vein. So it misses the long, laborious process of going through the lymphatic system. It's sent directly to the liver. So it won't store. So what happens with the C8 is they instantly convert into BHB, beta hydroxybutyrate, the master ketone body. Once you've created a ketone, it doesn't go back. You can't store the ketones. So once they've been created, you either use them or waste them. So you won't gain weight by over consuming on MCT. The only mechanism in which that would happen is if you were consuming, say, too much fat, and that fat wasn't being used through beta oxidation and ketone production, and then some of it was being stored. But MCT is a fantastic way to increase, and as you say, magnesium citrate, that's fantastic. Yeah, those are the changes that I would make.
Brilliant. Okay. I'm just going to deal with somebody in the chat and just say, Carrick's, it concerns me when people do carnivore without basic knowledge. The person above says they do 1-to-1 protein to fat and they are wondering why they haven't lost weight yet. I apologize for the inconvenience. And earlier on, they've said that it should be 70% fat, 30% protein. Well, 1-to-1 is that, because in this room, we deal with weight. And by weight, protein to fat is 1-to-1. But if you deal with calories, then it is about 70 to 30%. So I would not get concerned because, and certainly not criticize other people, because you have shown a little bit of not having the basic knowledge, to be honest. And I'm not being horrible to you either. We're all here to learn. Richard just gave a slightly different answer to mine because I forgot the MCTs. So no one's perfect. All right. Well, Richard's perfect. I'm not perfect, you know?
Not
so this, let's be kind to everybody, you know, and let's be kind. We don't boot people out and we don't censor people, but I just think that, you know, don't jump the gun too much because, like I say, we don't use calories. We tend to go by weight. That's it. Simple as that. Coach Casey, thank you so much for the donation of $20. That's very kind of you. I want to just tell Richard a very spooky coincidence because I've just got off a call with Coach Bronson and I think you spoke to him yesterday, which is just
Coach
amazingly
Bronson and we had an amazing conversation yesterday. I know we've had him on our live previously when we did the 24-hour. What a real nice guy. Like, I mean, I know we had him on the 24-hour live, but I never had chance to speak to him prior to that or after. Real nice guy, super knowledgeable. We recorded some incredible content. We discussed, and I'll explain briefly, we went into some of Di Nicola Antonio's claims that have been going back and forth recently. And he went through the 6 studies that he mentioned in regards to ketogenic low carb lifestyles not being optimal for athletic performance, and yeah, he's just debunked every one of these. So spoiler alert, all debunked, but being released soon.
Yeah, what a weird thing, because I saw him on Casey Ruff's show and they were talking about people adding carbs back in, and I just messaged him and said, I watched that and you two gentlemen nailed it and you were so polite, so respectful, but you still said what you wanted to say, and I thought it was really good. So I just thought we'd have a catch up, and we were talking about the limitations in studies, and it was fantastic. So in the next few weeks, there's going to be a Coach Bronson video with Richard coming out, which I can't wait to see because that particular subject is dear to my heart too. And hopefully people will also see my one with him talking about the limitations of studies. So we've got a super chat here. Husband carnivore 9 months. He's diabetic 10 years. Blood sugar still too high. Guess what time sugars start to decrease? More, less, stroke protein. Right. Okay. So so if you're carnivore 9 months, and you said blood sugar is still too high, that sort of, I can infer from that it's gone down, but you still think it's too high. I don't think you'd write it's still too high if it hadn't gone down a bit. What is too high? So let's get into the weeds here. If you look at the renal threshold, which is technically actually where diabetes comes in, because diabetes was diagnosed 2,000 years ago at least from drinking urine that had too much sweetness in it. So actually, that's where diabetes mellitus comes from. Greek and Latin meaning passing through honey-flavored urine, or piss, actually. But anyway, so that's what it actually that's what it means. So 180 milligrams per deciliter is pretty much nailed on as the renal threshold, and that's for people eating a lot of carbs. So I think for people on carnivore, it might even be a little bit higher. But anyway, let's assume that we're all the same, exactly the same, and it's 180 milligrams per deciliter. Is it that high? Then you've got the polyol pathway, which comes up at 7 millimoles per liter, which is 127 milligrams per deciliter. Is it that high? The best thing you can do is get these urine strips, which you take a pee on, and between 60 seconds and 90 seconds, depending on the brand, you can then see the glucose in the urine. So that's the first thing you could rule out. Is there glucose in the urine, or is there a small amount of glucose in the urine? But I would love the numbers, actually. So if you've got some time to put the numbers down that you're worried about, I think we can give you a better answer. When does it start coming down? Well, what is your version of carnivore? Are you still having lots of dairy, for instance, where there's still carbs coming in? Is it 100% carnivore? Is it 70% carnivore, which is still carnivore? So we need to know a little bit more. But the numbers will come down, and you just have to get more insulin sensitive. Exercise, underrated. If there's no movement, if your husband's not moving at all, and it doesn't sound much fun for him to go to the gym if he's never exercised, even just a brisk walk for 15 minutes a day, going up and down the stairs, anything, that movement makes the cell not need insulin to trigger what's called the GLUT4 receptor to come out of the cytosol and into the membrane. Just exercise will get that happening, and you will become more sensitive to insulin, which will suck up the glucose. But after 9 months carnivore, I would like to know the numbers. Did you want to add anything, Richard?
Yeah, look, it's something doesn't ring true there with me. And I'll give you an example. Client started with me 2 days ago. His and this is British numbers. You can do the conversion to US if you need to. He was just under 11 millimoles blood glucose. Mm-hmm. And within 2 days, he's sub 6. He's in a non-diabetic range in 2 days of changing the food that he consumes. Over half, so it's still fluctuating, but technically going by blood glucose, he's now in a non-diabetic range in 2 days of living a carnivore-based lifestyle. There's something else going on with this. I mean, there are other contributing factors. So if the HPA axis is damaged, the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenals, this can dysregulate. This can cause issues with the diurnal rhythm and give higher blood glucose. If he is training, so you mentioned that he may not be training, he could be training. And if he is training and working out, this could increase glucose also. So it depends on when he's testing and if he's using a CGM. My advice for this would be to try a CGM. Excuse me, the Freestyle Libre is my one of choice. There are others which I have noticed consistently show higher readings. I won't name any brands, but the one that I would use would be the Freestyle Libre. You can track your blood glucose for 14 days. And what I do with my clients is that I put them on 2 of these consecutively for 14. So we're covering basically a month's worth. And we can track, and my clients can see then how their blood glucose is effective in the morning, after a workout, after eating, and so on and so forth. Now, within 2 days, he's technically reversed his diabetes. So at 9 months, there's something else going on there. There's something else that maybe isn't quite right. What I would suggest is booking a consultation with either yourself, Steve, or myself, and we can really get into the weeds with this and break it down, because there are lots of moving parts, isn't there? But to be 9 months on carnivore, I'd be surprised if you are, or your husband still is diabetic, or there's something else going on. I think there's more to this than meets the eye, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's why I wanted to qualify what has happened, because some people come in at 300 milligrams per deciliter, and in 9 months they're down to 170, which is still high. I will give them that, but that's a huge difference. But anyway, yes, you're right. I mean, let's get a bit more detail. I think that that would be helpful. We've got Jonathan in the house. I just want to say hello to Jonathan because he's saying present. So that's very good. And we've got Coach Bronson commenting, I'd rather not poop than don't eat up my eggs. I'll give up eggs. So thank you. Apparently we're rock stars.
We discussed eggs on our call.
Yes, right.
And so is Coach Bronson. Legend.
Yeah, he is very good. I mean, so your guy, what was it, 11 millimoles per litre? Yeah, that's about 100. That's
over 11.
200 yeah. So that's 200 milligrams per deciliter. You know, so and that went down.
And he was. Well, in fact, I'll give you. Can you still see me?
Yeah, I can still hear you. Yeah,
shit.
I can. Don't you swear, Richard? We can still hear you. We can still hear you swearing over there.
Good. Right. I won't be swearing. I hit the button and I thought I cut you off. Right. Let me check. I'll get the real numbers now. Okay. Just so I'm not lying. So we began at.
Your camera's gone off, by the way.
Yeah, that's fine as long as you can still hear it. So it was 10.3. And we went down to within 2 days. Where is it? 5.4.
5.4. Right, okay. Yeah, that was in 2 days. Yeah, and I agree with you because you can definitely do that sort of thing. You know, I've had people off their diabetic meds. Let me just remove that and put that up there with the picture. I've had people off the diabetic meds in 3 weeks. Absolutely. So he's gone from 185.4, because I've just used my calculator, 185.4 milligrams per deciliter to 97.2. So can you still hear me, Rich? Yeah, there you are. Right, great stuff. Let's get the next question.
Yeah, sorry. Which point did you lose me?
No, we're fine. I covered for you by just talking away.
Awesome.
So let's go to here's a great one to answer. John, do you have a chat where we can ask a question verbally rather than typing? Well, funny you should say that, because now this seems like a plant, doesn't it? Because we could tell you about Skool, which I will do now. Skool is a community Richard and myself run. Well, we're not just Richard and myself. There's loads of Skool communities, but we run one called Low Carb Skool, which looks like this. I will just share the screen so you know what we're doing. And we're in half an hour. We will be doing a live Q&A where you can talk to us if you want to. You can definitely do that. And you can ask questions, and you can basically do what you see here, where you type a question and get an answer. But you can also go on the calendar and you can go on to live calls. So we've got one at 8 o'clock tonight. This is the one at 7 here. We did a live question and answer at 10:30 on Friday. 7 o'clock I did on Wednesday, and Richard and myself did one Monday at 6 p.m. So there's always a chance on there. And I will put a link in the description while Richard is going to answer the next question. So the Skool is really inexpensive. There's also a classroom, by the way, if you want to do lots of courses, there's loads there. And if you want to become a premium member, there's even premium content. You can learn everything. There's loads of ebooks. There's loads of videos. There's so much content, you would not believe it. So let's get rid of that off the screen. And let's go back to the questions. Yeah, so I'll put a link in the description. We'll get the question up for Richard. And then we'll go to me doing that link for you. So why would you do one-to-one protein and fat? Why would you do that in a million? Oh, that's the same person. Yeah, so we'll get rid of that one. That's not what we need. We've covered that. Oh, yeah, here we go.
You've answered that. It's 1-to-1 by week.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Let's do this one then. When immunocompromised after a lung transplant, would you think the immune system would strengthen being carnivore? Not eating undercooked or processed meats are discouraged after transplant. What do you think, Rich?
So look, it's from a basic standpoint. Oh, can you hear me, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. I can hear you.
Yeah. So what 100%. So look, good. I think there's a delay. Look, if we look at what heals and repairs the body, it's protein and fat. And we've mentioned this a number of times, and we've presented on it all over the world in regards to how the body uses protein. So we carry out something called protein synthesis. We consume animal proteins, we break these down into amino acids, and then via a process called protein synthesis. I won't bore you too much with this today, but essentially, in short, we take photocopies of the DNA and we use the code on the DNA, the codons, the nucleotides, to rebuild human proteins. So we consume animal proteins, break them down into amino acids, and we reconstitute them into human proteins. So this is how we heal, build, and repair every single cell within the body. So if you've just had any operation, including a lung transplant, then the body needs to heal and repair. The body's in a state of having to carry out this process to heal, build, and repair. Protein is key to everything, and it's something that is often feared through its negative media presence and its ability to cause things like cancer, and it's a fallacy. And we can get into these studies if you like. I mean, the main one for this comes from the IARC in 2015, which basically over 800 studies actually showed zero correlation, by the way. But animal proteins are key. So it's if you're recovering from any operation, then I would recommend increasing the protein and fat, and equally as important, removing the anti-nutrients. And the anti-nutrients are things like fiber. Yes, fiber is an anti-nutrient. It is not beneficial to the human body. It's incredibly damaging to the human body. Other compounds such as lectins, which are found predominantly in things like grains and in vegetables, but to a lesser degree in vegetables. But some of the vegetables that are higher in the lectins are things like tomatoes and bell peppers and potatoes, for example. But bread, pasta, rice, and cereal, the biggest contributor to the lectins in the form of wheat germ agglutinin. These will cause intestinal permeability, which will lead to autoimmune issues in the body, essentially attacking itself. But the lectins and the phytates are anti-nutrients, so they will prevent the absorption of the amino acids by as much as 100%, by the way. So if we look at how the body creates testosterone, for example, we need zinc in order to do this, which is one of the cofactors involved in this process, and that can be blocked by as much as 100% with the phytates found in things like bread, pasta, rice, and nuts and seeds, so on and so forth. So the more of the animal proteins and natural fats that you can gravitate towards, then the quicker that you're going to see a recovery.
Brilliant answer. And the person that asked about their blood sugar just confirmed it was 8.8. So I've just done a follow-up question. 8.8 now. What was it at its highest? And 8.8 is 158 milligrams per deciliter for people that want to know. So we now need to know what it was, because if let's say it was 300 9 months ago, then we can see that there is definitely some progress happening. But so for other people asking questions, the more detail you give us, we're not asking for a novel, but if you can think, well, how can I help the context of this? Just give us a little bit more detail. We're fine with that. Okay. Let's go to the next question. So thank you for the to in and throwing with the information. Let's have a go. So we've done the question for the verbally asking questions. I put a link in there. We now have Mr. Beaumont. Would Stim Enhance, Plasma Flow, and Cyactive have any effect, good or bad, on stomach inflammation? Well, that's a cereal product which you can get from me. They don't have a bad effect on the stomach. I've never had that said to me, but there's always a first time. Richard will know this from also doing his electrolytes. You can thoroughly research your electrolytes and think everything's tickety-boo, and there could be an outlier out there, and they react badly to one thing in there that you've never heard of before. But I've been doing that for a long time, and I've never had a report of that ever. I've only had good reports. So I can't think of anything in there that would cause a problem. Let's go to the next question. Right, sorry, I didn't get rid of that. I'll get rid of that in a minute. Right. can you have good RBC omega-3 index when only consuming ruminant meat and eggs? I need more omega-3 to get rid of dry eyes. Belgium. Hello, Belgium. And I used to have dry eyes. And yes, I'll keep this handy because I used to have to use these. And I never thought it would go, and they went. It just went. The stricter you are, the better. And if you go off piste a little bit, you put yourself back a little bit. But I've had too many people come to me who did have dry eyes, and it's resolved. So I think with ruminant meat and eggs, I think you can do it because that was my diet. I've changed it a little bit now, and I actually eat a lot more fish. So if you wanted to add more fish, I don't think that's bad either. Richard and myself do promote lamb because lamb is very good. So I don't think you have to be too restrictive. When you're looking at ruminant meat, if it's grass-fed, the omega-3 ratio or content is a little bit higher, but I think you'll be okay. Richard, did you want to add?
Yeah, I think you've nailed it.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much.
All good.
I'm dying to know where you are, by the way, but here's one up your street. I'm not going to be nosy. Right. Can you talk? Well, Richard can talk. I tell you what, I can sit back now. Can you talk about the effects of artificial sweeteners in diet sodas? By the way, just a little bit of trivia. If you look at Diet Coke, for instance, it's still 99% water compared to a can of original Coke, which is 90% water. But anyway, Richard, can you talk about the effects of artificial sweeteners in diet sodas?
Yeah, brilliant question. So look, there's a number of sweeteners that are used in foods or non-foods today, and they are deemed to be better for you because they don't elicit an insulin response, but most of them do. Things like aspartame and maltodextrin, for example, and maltodextrin scores higher on the glycemic index than glucose does. So even though they may be sugar-free, they can still elicit an insulin response, either in the form of maltodextrin, which is higher on the glycemic index. There are others which are things like polyols. So we see it like xylitol and maltitol. These can still be absorbed by as much as 65% as carbohydrates. So even though the way that the companies get away with this is that if it contains a sweetener which is a polyol, then they can say that it contains 0 carbohydrate, but 65% of the polyol can still be absorbed in some cases. So you could still be consuming 10 to 20 grams of carbohydrate effectively, and that product, the manufacturer of that product doesn't have to state that on the product, which is criminal, really. Beyond that, there are some of the polyols which do not elicit an insulin response. Glycerol, which is like a sweet fat, which falls into the polyol category, that doesn't elicit, and erythritol. So erythritol is completely 0 carb, and this does pass through and changes in the body, and that won't elicit an insulin response. Some people will still suffer with a sylvatic response, which is essentially when they taste something sweet, and that can elicit a response. But generally, artificial sweeteners are not the good thing that they've been made out to be. And this does depend on where you are on your journey, by the way. So somebody new to low carb, if they were in a situation where they were going to a wedding or whatever, and they were going to drink alcohol, let's live in the real world. It's easy to say, look, just don't drink it. But we live in the real world. You'd be better off drinking alcohol, which is a higher percentage, something like whiskey or gin, for example. Now, some people will add like a soda or something to this, and they would add like a Diet Coke. Now, that is damage limitation. That is better than adding full fat Coke, should we say, full sugar Coke, but it's still not as good as not consuming it at all. So if you're new to the journey, then those things can be beneficial from that perspective. But in an ideal world, we wouldn't consume any of them at all, any beverage that contains these artificial sweeteners. And as I say, if you are consuming anything that does contain a sweetener, use a natural one. And the best ones are going to be things like stevia, erythritol, monk fruit for our friends in the States. What else? And glycerol. Glycine is also a fantastic addition, which is an amino acid you can add, which will add a sweet taste. Citrulline malate, another amino acid you can add if you wanted a sweet taste to something else. But beyond that, things like aspartame and all of the other nasties, I would avoid at all costs if able to do so.
What do you think of allulose?
Allulose, that's quite new. I had the opportunity to invest in this, believe it or not, from, well, a company that was going to produce it a number of years ago. Mixed opinions. I think it seems to be one of the better options, but it's still early days. Look, in an ideal world, you wouldn't consume any of these things, but you can make an argument against erythritol and stevia. I mean, stevia it's a known form of contraception. You know, it was used as a form of contraception, but again, the amount of stevia that one would need to consume would be a lot higher than most of the tests that have been done. There was something with erythritol which came out, I think, last year or the year prior, and again, you'd need to consume like 1,000 times more erythritol than they tested in order, or than you would consume on an average day to be a problem. So even though I always say that, you know, if it contains a toxin, and quite often I give the analogy tonight of if we were consuming rat poison, you know, and this is against when we talk about the cyanide in nuts and seeds, for example, or the plant toxins in plant compounds. Why would we consume a little if we, you know, we wouldn't consume a full tub of these toxins? Why would we consume a little just because the poison's in the dose? And you could argue this when it comes to sweeteners, but many of us who are new to the lifestyle, and I run a business, I own a low carb, ketogenic carnivore business. So I make supplements, I make low carb alternatives, but I am carnivore. I would regard myself as being incredibly strict. I would regard myself as being one of the strictest carnivores probably on the planet most of the time. But still, if I look, I produce carnivore product. This makes up a fraction of my business. And if that was the only thing that I sold on my business, which was carnivore elite, I wouldn't have a business. And the fact is that 99+% of the people coming into being ketogenic and carnivore, they don't want to be ketogenic and carnivore, and they don't understand the benefit of doing so. They don't want to live that lifestyle for a prolonged period of time, and many of these people who become strict carnivore do so through a series of incremental changes. So they start by reducing carbohydrate. They start with swaps, low carb breads, for example, low carb wraps, different types of bars. You and I wouldn't consume them, but, you know, people new to the lifestyle consume these, and over a series of incremental changes, maybe months or years, then they become more strict towards animal-based and eventually carnivore. But it's those products that are the segue. So, you know, I would say don't consume any form of sweetener. But if you're in the early days, if you're in the very much early part of your journey, these can be game changers because they allow you to come away from drinking Coca-Cola or Pepsi or whatever it may be, having a better sweetened version of a product, such as the electrolytes that we make, for example, that contain things like stevia. So you can make an argument against all sweeteners, but the best, in my opinion, as I say, is stevia, as long as the extraction process is clean, and there are ones that are not so clean. Erythritol, allulose would be up there, I think. Monk fruit. But as Cami says, allulose can give you the runs. Erythritol can do that also if consumed in excess, by the way. I think any one of them can if consumed in excess. And monk fruit for our friends in the States. Those are probably the better ones that I would aim for.
Excellent. Thank you. PA Beta or PAR Beta. Been doing one-to-one protein and fat for 2.5 years. Been stuck at the same size weight for a year. I am down 260 pounds.
Wow.
I do have low testosterone. Could that be the reason for the stall? So there's been a weight loss stall, or should I tweak my fat protein ratio?
Brilliant question. So look, low T is common when you've been carnivore for 2.5 years, for a number of reasons. So testosterone is used for, I'm guessing it's testosterone we're talking about with this.
Yes. Yeah.
Testosterone is used to transport or in the process of glycolysis. So if we consume high levels of sugar, we use testosterone as part of that process in the same way that we do with T3, thyroid hormone. We also use testosterone in the breakdown of stored body fat, so lipolysis and beta oxidation, and we also use testosterone in the production of things like the red blood cells, so which we know, in the same way that T3 also, that they live longer. So the red blood cells live longer. So our requirement for as much testosterone becomes a lot lower. So what we see initially when we gravitate into carnivore, we see, and I think you can attest to this, Steve, we see testosterone go through the roof. And this, I think, and this is my opinion, we are breaking down lots of stored body fat, and it's feeding into this pathway. Testosterone goes through the roof, fantastic, box ticked. Then two or 3 years in, we get the Saladinos. My T3's tanking, my testosterone's tanking. But this is because the body no longer requires all of this. Now, we've broken down the body fat. By your own admission, you've lost a hell of a lot of stored body fat. Now you're probably a lot leaner. So therefore, you're breaking down a lot less of the stored body fat, and you're using more from the dietary fat. So this process requires less testosterone. Obviously, you're not consuming any carbohydrates, so you require less testosterone there. So instead of having the requirement for this much testosterone, we only need this much. In the same way that the body works with insulin, for example. So if we're on a high carb diet, then the body requires this much insulin. When we are low carb, the body requires this much. It doesn't mean that we're insulin resistant, just our requirement to carry out the same amount of work has become a lot less. So it's common to see low T3. Now, the way to combat this is to eat as nature intended. So the 1-to-1, which again is by weight, because that's how nature generally presents it to us. An egg, for example, is almost equal ratios of protein to fat. A piece of beef, roughly equal ratios of protein to fat. Chicken breast with the skin on, protein and fat. Animal proteins generally come in nature as an average 1-to-1 ratio in weight, protein to fat. But if we look at the animal as a whole, the animal contains fatty cuts and it contains lean cuts. We would have eaten the muscle meat, we would have eaten the organ meats, we would have eaten the lean cuts, the fatty cuts, the connective tissue, we would have drunk the blood, we would have done all these things that we no longer do. Now we come into the lifestyle, we aim for fatty cuts of everything, which is fantastic. But now is the time to start to maybe live more of an ancestral appropriate lifestyle, mix up the higher fat days with lower fat days. So we wouldn't have always had access to fatty cuts of meat. So change those days, change some of the days to leaner days. So go for leaner cuts. When we eat lean cuts, we're not using the dietary fat for beta oxidation. We're going to use this. And this basically allows us to burn, or sorry, wrong choice of words. Bart K would roast me if you heard me say that. We would metabolize more of the stored body fat and use that essentially for ketone production. So mix higher fat days or standard fat days and have a couple of days of lean. And then what you can do also is mix it up with lower protein days and higher fat days, because it's the protein that's going to elicit that insulin response, which is going to break the bonds on the glycerol backbone and drive the fatty acids into the fat cells. So this is what I do when I want to reduce or lose a little bit of stored body fat. I will have a few days of lean cuts. So I'll go for like skirt. I may even do some fish. I eat chicken occasionally, or I'll fast for a few days. Like I just won't eat for 2 or 3 days, which is perfectly normal, by the way. Once your body's healed, I don't recommend anybody do this who is new to this way of living, just to jump straight into fasting. But I can go days comfortably without eating. I'll just do that, and I'll tap into stored body fat. But change the ratios. Go for leaner cuts. If you're consuming things like dairy, then drop the dairy. Milk and cheese, again, as we mentioned earlier, they contain higher levels of these odd chain fatty acids, which via those pathways we mentioned are going to lead to fat storage. Add less fat to cooking. I no longer add any fats to cooking. I let the meats cook in their own juices. I don't add any butter, tallow, lard, or ghee or anything to cooking, and I no longer add fats after they've been cooked. So I let the meats cook in their own juices, and I just use those natural juices to consume. So if you implement those, you'll soon start to see a breakthrough through that plateau.
Brilliant answer. That's very good. We always give a full, frank answer. If you haven't got to, if we haven't got to your questions yet, then you can buck the trend by giving us a super chat, which moves you up the queue and supports the channel. Or you could join us over at Skool in about 5 minutes when we're doing the live question and answer, carrying on for another half an hour, which would be nice to see you over there. And again, supports the channel. Next question, Gabrielle. The cells with no mitochondria consume glucose only? Question mark. Yes. They use anaerobic glycolysis. And what about the lactate produced by this process? Well, they're dealt with by monocarboxylate transporters. So the red blood cells, it's not a troublesome thing. It's absolutely fantastic. Red blood cells and the platelets actually use this system where the GLUT1 allows glucose to enter the cell. It produces its own energy, and the waste product is lactate. Get this, the monocarboxylate transporters put it into the bloodstream. It goes to the liver, and the lactate is turned into glucose. Isn't that wonderful? Or the Cori cycle when it comes to red blood cells. You also have it in the sperm cells, exactly the same thing, pretty much. And the same with the eyes, actually, corneal and the lenses, where there's obviously as an aqueous solution in your eye. And that's what happens. You get the diffusion of glucose in there, anaerobic glycolysis happens, and then you get a drainage into that fluid, and off goes the lactate. Guess where it goes? It goes back to the liver and gets recycled and becomes glucose again. So if people are out there, influencers saying that, this is why, for instance, carnivore might be really bad because produce a lot of lactate, that's just nonsense, by the way. But I'm going to give you house points for not saying lactic acid. So that was really good. Right. I think we have possibly 1 minute left to go. We'll squeeze this question in. When dry fasting, how to take the medicine or electrolytes if no water should be consumed? Great question.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't on a dry fast. It's as simple as that. You wouldn't consume it. But look, if dry fasting can be incredibly beneficial, good friend of mine, Lauren, recently achieved a 8-day dry fast, 9 days total fasting, 8 days dry. I can't even comprehend that. 8 days of no food or water. But it takes time to build up to this. I've never done a dry fast longer than 24 hours. I'm going to at the end of December. I'm going to attempt a 72 dry. The reason I've never done it before is because it seems to bring on my migraines. But I think this is part of the healing process, so I'm going to power through at a time when I don't need to work. But I wouldn't recommend a dry fast if you've never done any fasting previously. So I would work into this with some wet fasts, build up over time. But look, if we look at the benefits of fasting, we fast for autophagy, mitophagy, brown fat activation, lipolysis, increased insulin sensitivity. All of these can be achieved by the production of ketones and living a ketogenic lifestyle. So we can elicit a low-level response to this just by being ketogenic and carnivore. So if you're new to this, then do that. Sorry, you just put me off. Stephen and Richard has answered me over 20 times. Yeah, fantastic. And the rest probably, Mika. But yeah, fantastic Skool group. But that would be my advice with dry fasting. I wouldn't jump straight in if you're not used to doing wet fasts. Build it up. Unless you're trying to combat something specific. I'm not going to get into certain illnesses that will get us banned or conditions that will get us banned if we mention certain words. But dry fasting, incredibly beneficial, but I would certainly build up to it if you haven't done it previously.
Yes. And yes, we've just run out of time. Otherwise, we could have gone to town on this question, which I'm not even going to say out loud. But anyway, thank you for the question. William, if you're in our Skool group, then you could ask that question over in the Skool group where we can speak totally freely and without worries of being banned, allegedly. I do think that here in state-controlled Britain, messages are definitely scanned, but we'll not get into that either. I would really like to, because, Richard and I WhatsApp each other every so often, and all your messages, and I've recently had somebody pick up on a message and say you shouldn't say that because you're being watched by Big Brother. And I was like, oh, that's a bit scary. But anyway, right. If you've enjoyed it on YouTube, thank you very much. If you're not going to join us on Skool, we still appreciate you being here. Thank you for staying the whole hour. It is really appreciated. And we do try to give you as much bang for your buck. We do answer the questions, but the super chats really help. They do really help the channel. Support us by subscribing and liking. That would be really handy. Even if you comment, just thanks. That helps. It's all engagement. It just gets us out there. If we don't see you in Skool, we'll see you next week at 7 p.m. here in State Controlled Britain. So thanks for tuning in and asking all the questions. For those that are going to see us in Skool, see you in about a minute.